All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Richard Schoen, coming to you from our worldwide headquarters in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Today's webinar focus topic is Stop Rekeying Data Between IBM and Other Applications. Today's 30-minute session will be focused on a common problem, rekeying data between applications. End users spend lots of time keying data between one or more applications. We'll be introducing you to some of our IBM automation technology to help you streamline your daily work and reduce the rekeying of data between IBM and your other applications. As mentioned, I'm Richard Schoen, Director of Document Management Technologies here at Health Systems, part of the Technical Solutions Group, bringing topics like this to our customers and prospective customers. I have over 30 years of background with IBM, Windows and Linux platform software development, system integration, managing and delivering forms and documents, and helping customers with automation processes. I also have a heavy development background using .NET and Java, RPG, and just about any other language you can think of. Our journey today will hopefully provide a good introduction to a couple of our IBM automation technologies that can be used to prevent data rekeying between applications. First, we'll talk about the data dilemma many IBM users have when working with data from multiple platforms. Then we'll talk about 3 ways to eliminate data entry or data rekeying and how you might put that into practice. After that, we'll provide a short technology demo so you can see how you might improve some of your data entry and extraction processes. And then we'll end with a few minutes of question and answer. So feel free to enter your questions in the question window as we go, and I'll address them towards the end of the webinar today. We'll also plan to complete our session in about 30 minutes, so you'll have plenty of time to make your next important meeting. And today's event is being recorded, so you'll receive a link after the webinar to share with anyone in the organization who couldn't attend today's session. All right, so before we continue, I'm going to put up a quick polling question. You should leave this up for about 30 seconds, but if you can give me an idea kind of where you're at in the spectrum of application rekeying and what sort of things you're looking at for automating data between multiple applications, just check all that apply, and we'll take a few more seconds. But there's generally a lot of ways to keep data in place these days, and I do a lot of work with customers where they're double keying data, or they have people hand keying where they could automate data entry and that sort of stuff as well. So definitely lots of things to think about. All right, so let's close our poll. And so far, I'll share that. So it looks like the majority of you are looking for reformatting report data into Excel and other data formats. So that's definitely something we'll be talking about a little bit today, so that's cool. All right, so let's start with a little discussion about the data dilemma that your organizations might be facing. So getting the right data to the right place at the right time is important, and often that means rekeying of data from paper or across one or more business systems. Might also mean copying and pasting of information or performing file transfers or data replication. This usually means lots of times and lots of human intervention. So let's look at this a little more closely. Data might often come in and arrive in formats such as Excel or CSV, maybe other PC data formats. Files might arrive via email or FTP site or other method, and then the data gets manually keyed or imported into one or more of your systems. Then the data might get updated or entered into one or more IBM, SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, or other databases. This type of work screams manual process, and there's many opportunities to improve the incoming data processing. Then we have the need to generate data for vendors and trading partners and customers and employees. So traditionally, it's been hard to extract information quickly and easily from the IBM database for dissemination. So creating spreadsheets from our IBM database and report information has been difficult. Often data has to get transferred or replicated from the IBM to another database for use. So what if there was a way to reduce or minimize the effort it takes to transform data from our IBM to other formats and systems? Unfortunately, there is, and you'll learn about that today. So let's take a look at 3 ways of potentially streamlining your IBM data transformation to various formats for meaningful use. In today's world, every company has information that lives on different platforms and in different databases, whether it's IBM, DB2, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, or even Excel. We constantly have the need to collect and distribute our information as efficiently as possible without rekeying. Common problems for our RPG developers are different platform databases don't talk easily to each other from RPG. There's not an easy way for RPG to talk to those databases in real time. Often data comes in from vendors in CSV and Excel and Microsoft Access and flat file formats. So in our case, RPG to SQL Integrator is our solution to bring RPG and the other database platforms together to get things done. So think of it as making RPG a client to all these other databases. So we'll be demoing some of that technology in a bit. While data replication can be important for backup and recovery, it's not always a good method for handling real-time transactions. So in this RPG to SQL sample scenario, the customer has an e-commerce system running on a Windows server that uses a MySQL database to hold their incoming web orders. And then as the order gets placed, the data needs to be moved to the ERP system for order fulfillment. So when a new order gets entered into the MySQL database, a status flag gets set marking the order as new. And then over on the IBM there's a process running to pick up the inbound orders as they come in and move the information into the IBM order fulfillment system. Or the user could possibly interactively search the e-commerce database from an RPG application or a web application as well. There's a few different ways of architecting immediate access to the order data using RPG to SQL without moving the file or the database. So we'll be demoing some live SQL Server data access examples as well. When an order ships from the fulfillment system, order shipment status can then get updated back to the e-commerce system immediately by directly updating the MySQL database from an RPG application. So by using real-time data, the process of replicating large chunks of information is removed from the daily web order process, and those workflow processes are much simpler to accomplish. So the IBM system can natively query the PC or the server database, and if needed, update that information on that remote database. So using data in place is a good thing. By using real-time data across multiple databases, both the ERP system and the e-commerce systems can be updated at the same time, which avoids all the cumbersome file transfers and replication or dual system data entry, which I've seen a lot of. All right, so lots of key business information lives in IBM spool file reports or PC text files as well. So most IBM shops that I talk to still generate a good number of spool file driven reports. Often these reports can't be quickly rewritten to provide data output into a file because they might be vendor provided reports, and many business system vendors don't provide the source code to their programs or their reporting. Or there's a lot of RPG business logic embedded in the programs that can't be easily turned into a query or an SQL statement. So this is why allowing users to interactively log in, download and convert reports for data mining is a great way for them to start using the information in existing reports without waiting for the IT team to write new queries or generate a new RPG report. So being able to quickly download, convert, and then deliver reports as needed is a great way to streamline your users' daily workload without rekeying data and performing a lot of copy and paste work. So our solution here is called Deliver Now. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. All right, so let's talk about some of the benefits of report and data automation. When it comes to IBM application integration to data on other platforms, RPG developers, IT, and business teams have not always had it easy. Businesses are always looking for ways to maximize employee productivity, and we've been around for over 20 years helping customers to eliminate data redundancy and replication, reduce time spent massaging data and merging information with IBM business applications. By allowing reports and data to be used in real time, the time spent moving data between platforms is greatly reduced or eliminated because that data can be used in place where it lives. Stopping the rekeying of data, we already talked about that quite a bit, and reducing the risk of data validation mistakes. So often that data being rekeyed and validated and updated into multiple systems manually can cause errors. So by automating that, and the retrieval of data from one or more data sources using a single RPG application or an existing report, data no longer needs to be keyed more than once, if even at all. Data can also be validated in one place to ensure information integrity as fields are updated across systems. So another example, an example of having one program update multiple data sources at the same time might be a company where, let's say they have the core business system on IBM and a manufacturing process system on Windows that uses SQL Server. So every time the customer record is changed on IBM the corresponding fields on the Windows manufacturing system can be validated and updated immediately as well. So this keeps two customer master file systems in sync at all times without having to do replication or dual data entry. And so think about that. We'll see an example. I'm going to show you an example of a subfile today, but it could be a green screen application or a web-based RPG application. But the idea that it can update an IBM table and synchronize directly to a SQL Server in real time with that customer information, that's huge. Automating the manual processes used to redistribute information. So if your reporting processes live on IBM or Windows and data needs to be aggregated in one database such as DB2 or SQL Server if you're on the PC each night for processing, your business can reduce the need for specialized business analysts to create PC formatted output in Excel and other formats. So if your team has strong PC reporting skills already, you can utilize those skills for report writing and report like maybe you have SSRS or you're using Crystal or something like that, and you want to use those tool sets for generating reports. If your team writes reports on IBM using tools like RPG or Query 400 or our SQL or Showcase products, take advantage of those skill sets so your IBM team can do your report writing as well. So it really depends where you have those team skill sets. You can also eliminate time-consuming and cumbersome manual processes for uploading and reformatting Excel data as well. So lowering labor costs and streamlining data and reporting. So at the end of the day, products such as RPG to SQL and Deliver Now have been created to improve data accuracy while saving significant time for employees so they can focus their time better servicing vendors, customers, and employees. Let's take a short look at how you can use Deliver Now to automate distribution of your IBM reports and other documents automatically. You might have the need to burst reports or split reports and extract information from those reports into various formats, then deliver them via email or fax. Or if you want to archive reports long-term to a network folder or our WebDocs report and document management system or SharePoint or another third-party document management system, Deliver Now can be the front-end process to that. It performs all that automatic report distribution and manipulation of data and then places them where they need to go. Or maybe you create invoices and statements and other document-based forms and you want to apply form templates to create high-quality documents without pre-printed paper. Deliver Now with the iForms add-on component can help with that as well. Deliver Now is our automated document delivery software used to perform automated delivery and distribution, as well as allow users to interactively pull and reformat reports from the I as well, which we'll take a look at. Deliver Now can deliver documents from any platform source that includes IBM spool files, PC files stored in the IFS, or on any network directory, including Windows, Linux, or AIX. So it really is multi-platform document delivery. Documents can also be delivered as formatted if they're already built with a process, or Deliver Now can turn them, if they're reports, into Excel or PDF or Word or HTML, spreadsheet and database formats. And then also for delivering electronic reports, as we mentioned, Deliver Now can deliver documents generated by iForms or AFP or even another third-party product as well. So we can tie into all kinds of other forms and reporting engines with this. So we'll be doing a short demo of the report extraction component in just a moment. Before we do our technology demo, let's talk about a few other data use cases. So manufacturing businesses run many different systems to provide product manufacturing assistance, order tracking, shipment of product, and more. Often the ERP systems for those companies are IBM based and need to access data on other platforms. In this case, the customer needed a way to send shop floor orders to an AIX-based system running an Oracle database from the IBM and then return the information to I via real-time database interactions with RPG to SQL. So by doing real-time data transactions between those systems, both the IBM and Oracle systems were kept up to date at all times. This customer owns several properties and has to do monthly and annual tax reporting to the state of Michigan. So the state mandated that they use a specific complex Excel workbook template that they supplied with multiple sheets. So this spreadsheet process typically took a few days at month end to complete, and the chance for errors during the creation of this was high. So also data needed to be aggregated or added into that spreadsheet every month throughout the year, and they kept all the versions of that. So by using RPG to SQL and the Excel functionality, they eliminated the manual data entry and automated the state reporting process. So this greatly improved their government reporting capability by automating Excel from their RPG applications. And they also saved several days per month of hand entering information. All right, so let's do some technology demo in here. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at, so this is the RPG to SQL component. So from a developer perspective, there's a PC component you can have running on your desktop. Typically, there's an instance that runs on a centralized server, most likely. But in this case, you'll see we actually have a CL command that we have front-ending our application code, which we'll look at. But basically, this connects to our PC component, to our SQL Server database, and then to the appropriate database within there, and then using the appropriate credentials. And so you'll see when we hit enter on this guy, you'll actually see when you're in debug mode and testing this guy, you can actually see everything that just happened. So what this guy just did is this program went and opened a connection to my SQL Server, and then it deleted all the records from my temporary table. Normally, you probably wouldn't do that. But then it inserted 10 records into my SQL Server database for me. So if we go over to SQL Server, we can prove that out and actually do, so you'll see our table here, and we'll do a refresh on it, and you'll see we just inserted data in real time. It's pretty fast. And so as long as you've got decent connections, I think most companies have either 100 megabit or gigabit connections between their servers nowadays. Typically, you're going to have sub-second access to most of your data using that methodology. So we'll look at the alternative to that one. So this one's now going to turn around and read data back. So let's take a quick look at that. So the same concept here, but we have a physical file defined that we're actually using on the IBM I to pull the data from the database and placing it into that file, and then we'll display it. So we'll run it again, and as you can see, it took about maybe less than a second, and it brought all those records back and placed them into IBM I table. So in this case, you don't necessarily need to place it into a table, but we did for our demo. You could be using that data real time as you're querying it off of your SQL Server. So in here you can see same concept. We connected to our server, we did our SQL select, and then we read back all the data. So very similar to reading an IBM I physical file, but you're actually reading data using SQL in real time. So let's take a look at the RPG for that. Hopefully you all are using RDI nowadays. It definitely makes RPG nicer to look at. But in this case, so the pattern here for these programs, so if you're using RPG SQL, it binds in as a service program. So in this case, you'll see we pass a couple parameters into our program for our PC component, and for our database connection string, we use standard ODBC connection strings if you're creating a database connection. So typically this boilerplate is at the top of every program. So the first thing it does is if you pass the host name, it gets the IP address where the PC component is at, and then it connects to the RPG to SQL Server component, and then it opens your database connection. So in this case, this is just opening a standard ODBC connection out to SQL Server, and now we're ready to actually access our data. So if everything came back correct, we can do that. And you'll see we talked about this is where we did a delete all of our records. And then in this example, we're actually looping through a physical file. So we do a read, and then basically run till end of file, and basically we're building out insert statement and then inserting this data into our SQL Server database, and then we're reading the next record. So, and these examples are meant to be purposely simple because this is a good pattern for reading from a physical file, or even using SQL in the IBM I to read data and then write it out to a SQL Server table, or maybe issue updates if you're updating records or something like that, or deleting perhaps. And then at the end, we close everything up. So that's always good housekeeping, but that's our good pattern. So you'll notice in our component where we read that data, it looks roughly the same. So we'll take a look. So here you'll see we've got all the same information, all of our boilerplate startup stuff that comes in here. And then you'll see we connect. And then in this case, we're actually doing a SQL select. So what that does is it runs the query, and then it opens a cursor. So much like opening a physical file, or if you're using embedded SQL RPG, opens that file, and then you move first, just like you would in our RPG program. And then you can move through all the records. So in this case, we're reading our SQL Server data, and then reading to end of file, and then inserting it into a physical file. So you can see here, we're basically doing our read. We then move our fields into our DDS-defined fields for our customer file, and then we actually write it just using the standard write statement, and then we do a move next. So very similar to standard RPG if I was just using DB2 tables, but we're actually reading data from a SQL Server or Oracle or Microsoft Access. And then we just close things up. So very straightforward if you're doing data imports and that sort of thing. So let's take a look at an interactive. We mentioned earlier an interactive program. So we have to show our prerequisite subfile application. So same thing, we're passing settings into this, and then we'll launch it up. There's a pubs database. So this is a titles table that's out on my SQL Server. And you'll notice I'm bringing it up in a standard subfile. Typically, if you're doing an RPG thing, you might do a set lower limits or something like that when you search. But in this case, we're just going to type in, I want everything that has the word cook somewhere in the title. So it found these 3 documents for me. And if I want, I could go in and view them. I certainly could do maintenance if I wanted to, but this one's only an inquiry. But it's reading that data real time from our SQL Server. So much like Position To, in this case, it's doing a search. So you can do a starts with or a contains style search or an exact search rather than doing Position To. So it makes it feel natural if you're doing standard green screen app. I talked to somebody yesterday that was deploying one of the modernization technologies on IBMI, where they're going to actually build web-based RPG, and they can use the same concept in a web-based RPG application, where they're taking their existing RPG programs and web-facing them, and then reaching out and accessing data on other platforms from those same applications. So that's pretty nice. All right, so we'll just show you the code on that. So very similar to our other one. We won't spend a ton of time on the startup piece, but it's a standard subfile, same boilerplate. And you'll notice in here we open our connection, and then it's got a run SQL statement, which we'll look at in a second. And then it's just a standard subfile, clear and fill, if you've done those before. And here it basically waits for some data entry, and then it goes to our run SQL, which does all the work of searching and retrieval and that sort of stuff. So let's go down and look at that. I think he's towards the bottom here. So in this case, you'll see all we're doing is we're building out an SQL statement. And in this case, I'm doing a bunch of like statements where I'm doing wildcarding on the SQL. So it takes those data entry fields that got entered when they press the enter key, creates our SQL select statement. And then we always make sure to close and reopen our cursor so we don't leave something open. And then it runs our SQL select, and then it does a move first. And then we actually have a subfile fill routine that actually reads through the first X number of records. I think it's up here. And there. Yeah, right there, subfile fill. So all he's doing is basically just reading through X number of records to fill the page, or if I'm filling multiple pages or something like that, it's just looping through and getting the results and filling those up, much like if you did a set lower limits and a read. All right. So let's look at one last RPG to SQL example, and then we'll look at some report samples. So this particular one is actually, I think we want test 29. So there's no parameters in this case. So what this guy's actually going to do is it's just going to read an Excel file. So you'll probably see Excel flash down here at the bottom, but it basically is launching Excel, because we can automate Excel right from RPG. So it's launching Excel. It's going to open our Excel file for us, and then it's going to read that data into a physical file. And there you see it drop those two records in for us into a physical file right from Excel. And so how that works, very similar, almost exact same logic. So always connect, always do this. But the difference is we have functions in here or procedures in here to launch Excel, make Excel visible. You can set cells or grab data from cells or insert rows and that sort of stuff. In this case, all we're doing is we're opening this existing Excel file that's out on my drive. And then I'm setting row and column positioning. And then again, I can just do rolling through the data within that spreadsheet. Much like a set lower limits, I can treat a spreadsheet just like a data table, or I can affect the individual cells if I need to and do formatting. So in this case, we're basically rolling through, we're getting the current row, all the fields, and then pulling those in. And then we do field moves like we did in our other example. These are just moving fields, and then writing to a DDS. So very easy to write RPG that imports documents into, or imports data into Excel, or exports. So it could work the same way, where you're reading Excel off the IFS or somewhere and then outputting to a different data source as well. And then we also have a couple of convenience commands that are built into the RPG SQL for Excel. So this particular one, let's find him. There we go. We have one for importing data. So if you have so this one's easy because we're exporting from a physical file directly to Excel. So it outputs all the columns, and then the column headings at the first row. If you have a spreadsheet that's defined that way as well, where it's got field names in the headers, and then it's got the data, we can actually read in a spreadsheet right into a predefined DDS member too, and use the same field name. So it's a great way to import data. I'd always think of like forecasting applications. We used to do that, where you'd send out a bunch of parts in an Excel spreadsheet with information. People would enter that data and then import it back into the I to do some forecasting or something like that. But just an example. So we'll run this. So you'll see in this case, it's going to export this guy to an Excel file for me. You'll probably see Excel flash here for a second again. And then there's our data. So let's pull that up. And there we go. And there you go. There's our data that we pulled up. So definitely, importing and exporting and reading real time of Excel and database information is pretty huge to be able to do that with this. So let's kind of change gears for a second. Let's take a quick look at some reporting. This component is part of our Deliver Now software and allows you to actually log in. If I remember my password, we'll make sure I do. And you can actually do real-time spool file access right from a web browser. So in this case, you'll see I've got a couple queues defined. My reports is like work spool file. In this case, we're going to select my output queue, and you'll see I've got a list of reports available. I can even filter that. If I had a bunch of reports, I can do a wildcard if I want to, or a specific search. So in my case, I filtered down to these sample reports, and I can just click on them if I want to view them in PDF. And it'll open that guy in PDF and convert it. So these are just standard reports. So any standard IBMI report can be converted that way. Same thing with HTML. If you wanted an HTML format for whatever reason, there's that. And Word format and text format, we'll do a text one. There's ASCII text. And then this is my favorite. We can export directly to Excel using what we call a mask. So we'll export the sample first so you can see it. So we say open it, and it says, what do you want to do? Do I want to create a mask or translate? We're going to translate this guy. And then it's using a mask I already created that extracts all the data from that ASCII report and then turns it into a spreadsheet for me. So we'll take a look at the spreadsheet here once it launches. It takes a few seconds on my demo VM here. And so there you can see the data that got pulled from that particular spool file report. So very straightforward to be able to pull data out. And you'll see we had some level breaks, which you'll see in a second, but rep and manager got placed into that report as well. So then I could slice and dice that data all that I want. So let's say I was just creating a report mask for this for the first time. I would just select this guy again. And what I can do is actually say create mask. He's not always friendly on that one. We'll do it over here. So in this case, this is our Windows version of that where you can pull the document. So we'll actually select this. We've set our output format. So you can pick all kinds of different formats, but we're going to go directly to a mask. There we go. And so what you'll see is we can actually define areas. I'm going to pull up a predefined one since we don't have a ton of time left here in our session today. But as you can see, it actually pulls up. So what you end up doing is there's a pattern here where we actually define how we're going to include lines. So in this case, I included anything where there was 5-digit numeric number for the invoice in here, and you'll see it puts an I next to each of these lines, and then I can just draw my columns. So I drew my various columns in the document here, and then I also did level breaks. So on manager, it pulls this value. On sales rep, it pulls this value, and it appends it to each column in the spreadsheet, so we have all of our data. And then you can even test right from here if you've got an existing mask. So we'll translate this one again, so you can see it work. So you can interactively create these report masks and then use them at runtime or as part of your automated report delivery process. So makes stuff really nice. And there's our same data. So very cool stuff. All right, so I think that's about all we have time to demo today. Let's go answer a couple questions here. So if you've got anything additional, let's go ahead and throw them up for me. Otherwise, I'm going to read a couple here. Just give me a second. Oh, this is interesting. So this one says, this may sound off track, but do you offer any tools to help my users enter data into one or more screens automatically? So they might be thinking of, we have what we call a robotic process automation tool called Automate. So our Automate software basically offers the ability to automate interaction with Windows and web-based and Telnet terminal applications such as 5250 to automate data entry and extraction. So you could actually have it read a spreadsheet and then key data entry into a web browser or a screen like that too. So not part of today's session, but we do have some technology for that. And then also, how fast can I expect my database access to be? I think we talked about that. If your network connectivity is good and your database is already tuned and indexed well, indexes are important, then database access will be sub-second. So RPG apps should see similar response time to their PC or their .NET counterparts when accessing data because RPG to SQL uses the same exact database drivers they would use. Does RPG to SQL have a limit to which databases it can access? As long as there's a ODBC or a database driver available, RPG to SQL can interact with it. So if there's a driver available for Windows, we can take advantage of it, which is nice. And then we'd already talked about this one a little bit. Is Excel required to integrate with Excel data? The answer there is yes. So we are actually automating the running of Excel. So there's all kinds of things, any operation that's available in Excel pretty much can be automated. So think of all the fun formatting and extraction and pivot tables and things like that that you might want to do in your spreadsheets. You can automate that from your RPG applications. Can I install the PC server component on my SQL server for Windows? So while the PC server component can be installed on the actual SQL Server box, we generally recommend giving the PC component its own Windows VM or a server box. So the component doesn't use a lot of storage, but depending on the data load and how much data you're pushing at one time, you're placing an extra load on your SQL Server machine. So isolating this PC server by itself on its own VM minimizes the risk of actually messing with your SQL Server performance. So we can talk more about that if you decide to test the software. Can I install a PC server component on PC desktops? Absolutely. We showed using it in development mode, which is awesome. So you can see everything that's happening while you're testing. Can I have a process update an IBM I table and then update the corresponding SQL Server table right after? Yep. So we talked about that, like our customer master example, where you can update two records across two different or even more databases if you wanted to. Why is RPG, I always like this, or why is RPG to SQL different or better than other products I've seen? So number one reason is that we don't use Java like a lot of the other application code that I've seen. So you're never launching Java. Basically, we just have a service program that binds in, and it's talking to our high-speed, lightweight socket server program to do all of its database connectivity. So it keeps everything lightning fast. All right, I think that's about all we have for questions today. Thanks for attending our webinar. We hope you learned some helpful information to allow your company to start thinking about real-time integration of your important multi-platform data, reports, and spreadsheets with your IBM I applications, allowing your company to save time, money, and eliminate data entry and rekeying of information. If you have any additional questions on today's topics, including RPG to SQL, Deliver Now, or anything else that we might have, or our document management components, feel free to reach out to our sales team, my counterpart Greg Schmidt or me, and we'll be happy to schedule a free consultation to address any of your questions or provide a more in-depth technical demo. So you'll also receive a link to the recording so you can share the webinar with those in your company who couldn't attend today's session. So thanks again for attending today's webinar. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.